All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. I hope if I do my job and I convey Bessie's essence, then when you leave here, you're going to have a little more bounce in your step than you did when you walked in, and you'll be more optimistic and maybe more excited about what's coming next, hopefully. We're going to start out showing 4 videos, and each one's a minute or less, so they're rather quick. They just show Bessie in action, so you get a sense of what does she do for fun? And then I'll go through with a PowerPoint, read some excerpts from the book, and take questions. And hopefully at the end, you'll have a sense of this transition that she went through and what a great teacher she is. It's good like that, Ash.
There is a permanent wrinkle in the middle of Bessie's forehead, the result of opening her eyes as wide as she absolutely can for most of her waking hours. Bessie was 4 years old and I was 61 when we learned that she was gradually going blind. She appears to believe her relentless effort will pay off and the world will somehow light up again if she just opens those white, filmy eyes wide enough. This book is about our charming, brave chocolate lab's 2.5-year transition to sightlessness and her adjustment to a world of darkness. In the process, Bessie unwittingly became an expert mentor and teacher for the high-wire act of growing older with grace and optimism. Because of her, I've become more watchful, mindful, compassionate, and ingenious, dreaming up new ways to make her life better. Hi, girl. This is our story.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right.
Want to play hockey? Good girl. Stop. You want to play soccer today? All right, here we go. Go. Drop. Sit. 1, 2, 3. Drop. Would you like to go again? Would you like to go again? Okay. Go. She'll find it eventually. Here you go. Here, Bess.
Next time you have a really difficult task, something you're like, oh, I gotta give up, I can't do this. Remember this video.
Right there.
What's that feel like?
There you go. Come on. Okay. Come on.
Hey. More, you'll see that trick in person in a minute. So I'm going to flip back and forth from slides to excerpts from the book. And welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. And if at any point a question comes up, just raise your hand and I'll make sure we get to you. So this is the very first page of the book. And as I said, I'm going to take you through this transition so you really get a sense of how this all played out. Before we begin, when my wife Ashley and I visited a kennel in a rural New Hampshire town to select a chocolate Labrador puppy, we had some reservations. The parents of the litter were described as healthy, purebred labs, but the mother was mysterious, aloof, and detached, not to mention that her hair was falling out. And then the kennel's owner opened the small pen and 8 adorable lab puppies poured out, slipping and sliding all over each other like fish from a net, all except one. The last pup peered out at us, inched her way into the sunlight, and parked herself softly on Ashley's feet. That's the day we fell in love with Bessie. She was just 7 weeks old, and we already knew we had the perfect dog. This book begins 4 years later when Bessie's perfection began rising to new levels. So any dog owners, if you've ever brought a pet home from the kennel, 7 weeks is way too early. It's supposed to be 8 or 10. But they said, if you want her, take her, and who could say no to that? We subsequently learned that of those 9 puppies, 4 of them went blind. So there was tremendous overbreeding going on at this place. It's since shut down and out of business, but no regrets on our part. This is the same day. That gives you a sense of her size. This is Bessie at about, I'm going to say, maybe 2 months old. You can see she's starting to grow into herself here. Here she is at 1. And if you've ever had a lab, this is a common look. It's like big heart, low IQ. Right? That's Bessie at 2. No indication here that she would ever lose her eyesight. And this is Bessie at about 3.5. I'm going to stop here for a minute. This was what she looked like to us when the vet said this dog's going to be blind in a year. We were incredulous. It's like, what? How can that be? And so this is the very first chapter. I'm going to read excerpts from about 9 chapters in a 31-chapter book, and I'll just kind of bounce through this time period. The quote at the beginning, which is beautiful, "The afternoon knows what the morning never suspected." Robert Frost. It's beautiful, right? Turning 61 was a wonderful surprise. Simple pleasures were magnified. I became a better listener. Judgments were forgotten and forgiven, and I talked less because there was really not much point. By 61, a person has experienced most of the personal and universal joys and heartaches life can serve up, either directly or with one degree of separation. By 61, you get it, or you should. There's a faint drumbeat in the room when a person passes 60. It's called TR, time remaining. You realize how quickly time passed between 40 and 60 and understand that by some esoteric law of physics, the next 20 years will be a blur. But even with all this life experience, I'm stunned when Ashley returns from a routine visit to the veterinarian with unsettling news. Our silly 4-year-old Bessie is losing her eyesight. According to her doctor, this sweet dog will be blind in 12 months. She has something called progressive retinal atrophy, an inherited disease that causes a degeneration of the retinas and results in permanent, untreatable blindness. The doctor speculates that she currently has approximately 85% of her vision in daylight and 50% when it's dark. On walks after sunset, she bumps into things, stumbles occasionally, and takes it slow. I had thought that was just Bessie's style, but now I know better. When the sun comes up, she's fearless and full speed. Yet with each morning walk, I look for a hint of fading glory, and almost subconsciously I realize Bessie is my GPS for the coming years of advancing age. And it didn't start out as a book, it was a diary. It was the moment I got that news, I realized this dog, the transition she's going to go through, is going to show me how to do this. So I'm just going to watch her and record it. And it was a diary written to myself, so when I needed a kick in the pants or a pat on the back, I could go back and read about it and go, that's right. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Ashley did a lot more research than I did about blind dogs. And one of the things the book said was they have a tendency to become depressed as their vision disappears. I hadn't seen any symptoms of that in Bessie. I don't think the depressed gene is in her DNA. It skipped her somehow. But Ashley, being conscientious, decided that to boost her spirits, we'd have a sleepover. We'd invite her best friends over. So this chapter is called House Guests. And the quote at the beginning says, "What a hell of a heaven it will be when they get all those hypocrites assembled there." Mark Twain said that. So the holidays had come and gone, thank goodness. And things had returned to normal, but it was dark at 7 in the morning, and it was dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. And so we felt, to lift her spirits a bit, we'd have a sleepover. Her two best canine friends happened to be Tula and Tui, the dogs owned by our sons. Both are female. Tula is a seasoned pit bull mutt from Brooklyn. Her older son, Tyler, rescued her as a puppy during his college days when the couple who owned her broke up and couldn't decide who would take the dog. Tula spent multiple hours a day chained to a post by a Fort Greene brownstone until our son adopted her. She has the Venus symbol for woman tattooed on her stomach. Tula was spayed as a puppy, and this must have been a message to all of her suitors from Flatbush. Save your ammo, boys. She wears it well. Tula, by the way, is this one over here. Once a cheerful sweetheart, Tula's a bit crotchety now at 11 years old, gray in the face, but still beautifully sleek, like some aging Hollywood star who spends hours each day with a personal trainer and a nutritionist and is close friends with a cosmetic surgeon. You know, the type who looks great from a distance, but more like something from a wax museum up close. Tula's a sweetie, but her demeanor can convey a strong sense of entitlement. Our other guest is Tui, a border collie named after a large honey-eating bird of New Zealand where she was born. Our younger son, Trevor, traded a quart of firewood for Tui in Wanaka on the South Island, where he spent a year after college. She flew home with him to New York, and after almost 2 days of air travel in a crate, she walked out of baggage claim and pooped and peed in the terminal at JFK. I liked this dog right away. Tui's a genius, bred to herd sheep, hundreds of them, all by herself. If there were colleges for dogs, Tui would get a scholarship to all the Ivies and Stanford. Simply stated, she loves all people and hates all their animals, except Bessie. That's because Bessie lets Tui do anything to her, including dragging her around by the scruff of her neck. Sometimes I just have to turn away. Over the weekend, Ashley and I go for long walks with the dogs, wrestle with them, build snowmen, watch football games, take naps, regular January things. And as the hours pass, I realize that Bessie, the youngest, is acting like the oldest. She thoughtfully relents to everything, like a lost breed of politician who knows how to compromise and get along with diverse groups. This trio of dog characters meshes like a three-part harmony because Bessie defers. I don't think it's insecurity or lack of confidence that makes Bess behave this way. She's like a Buddha who's found enlightenment and simply wants others to be happy and content. Here she is at the age of 4, losing her eyesight day by day, and these older fools are worrying about who sleeps where and who gets the cookies. Once again, this humble dog shines a bright light on our world from her increasingly dark one. Her message, wake up. 99% of the things we do each day are of little or no importance. The only things that really matter are those we do to make life a little better for others. I wish Bessie could look in a mirror and see how beautiful she is. That's not going to happen. But somehow I think she knows she's getting lovelier by the day. You can see it in her eyes. Anybody have a question? All right, well, this chapter is called Spring Training. So we made it through the winter, and now we're into the March, April. And the quote at the beginning, what day is it? It's today, squeaked Piglet. My favorite day, said Pooh. A.A. Milne, Winnie the Pooh, of course, right? To better understand Bessie's plight, I put on sunglasses one dark evening and walked through our backyard. It's frightening, really. The farther I get from familiar objects, the more I bump into things, and the harder it is to negotiate my path. I throw a ball into the darkness and can't find it. The urge to remove the sunglasses is overpowering, and it affords me another chance to admire how stoically Bessie is coping. When Bessie comes to me with a ball in her mouth, I'm more likely now to drop what I'm doing and give her what she wants, my time. I recall feeling somewhat the same way with our children when they were young and asked me to play catch or go fishing. I knew the day would come when they'd outgrow their interest in being with Dad, so I almost always said yes. With Bessie, it's different. Her ability will disappear before her interest fades, and I can only imagine how terribly confusing and heartbreaking that will be for her. So here I am again, always saying yes. I tend to see everyone in my life now as I see Bessie, that is, in the bright, shining light of the moment. The celebration of today is all I can be sure of. Bessie teaches me, be where you are. So as I mentioned, we worked and lived on a boarding school campus, and one of our fall traditions was the Blue Dog Parade. Our mascots were the Blue Dog, because at the top of the crest, going back over 100 years, there was this blue dog. So we said, we'll be the Blue Dog. And so on the first day of the fall athletic season, all the dog owners would dress their pets up in school colors, and we'd parade them through the campus, and the kids would touch them for good luck in their first games. And Bessie, as you can see, has an Elizabethan collar on, but she's got it on as a skirt. And she's got a school t-shirt on, and we just jazzed it up with a pink scarf, just to add a little feminine touch. So this chapter is called Back in School. And the quote at the beginning, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. Dr. Seuss. So we live right next to the school's largest athletic field, and every afternoon she hears soccer games, cross-country races, and the intoxicating noise of happy, active kids. Each time Ashley or I walk through the door, Bessie implores us with glaring, glowing green eyes to let her out so she can join the fun. When we do, the kids surround her as if she conveys some secret power. Bessie emits a level of joy and energy that makes everyone around her a little happier. She has no reservations or self-doubts about her obvious weakness, and I think middle school kids admire this in her, secretly wishing they could handle their own perceived flaws with the same carefree attitude and disposition. A few days after the parade, with pleasant memories guiding her, Bessie follows a group of kids from the athletic fields about half a mile back to the main campus and eventually makes her way to the steps outside my office. She appears as if she's on vacation, has just landed at the airport, and is waiting for her ride. Bessie spends about an hour sitting there picking up head scratches and hugs the way a street musician collects dollars and spare change from a passerby for a well-played melody. I watch her from my office window for a while and smile at the grace she conveys, surveying a landscape she can't really see, but understands. For Bessie, the beginning of every day is like the start of a brilliant sun-kissed morning after a heavy rainstorm, when the world is scrubbed clean and filled with endless promise and freshness. She heads out that door each morning with boundless high hopes and great faith, no, blind faith, that this will be the best day of her life. If Bessie could talk, I'm pretty sure she'd simply say, be strong and spread joy. That's a pretty good message from a dog whose world is getting darker every day. What do you notice about this? What hits you right away when you look at this picture? Kids, what do you see? What really grabs your attention? What is it about those eyes? Yeah, they're just big black holes. We all have pupils, those little dots in our eyes, and they get small when it's bright out, and they get big when it's dark. This is on a lake in January. The sun is shining, and the ice is white. Her pupils should be the size of a pinhole. Instead, they've dilated completely to let as much light as possible into those decaying retinas. And so this chapter is called Annual Checkup. This checkup took place just about this time for Bessie. There are only two forces in the world. This is the quote at the beginning. There are only two forces in the world, the sword and the spirit. In the long run, the sword will always be conquered by the spirit. Napoleon Bonaparte said that. A year ago, we were told that Bessie's vision was about 85% in daylight and 50% in dim light. Now, she perceives about 50% of her world in the sun and more like 10% when it's dark. I'm still playing games with Bess. We're playing hockey in this one. That's a hockey puck. But I'm also still throwing balls and kicking balls for her. And sometimes it takes her a few minutes to track them down, but she always finds the ball. Trouble now is when she locates it and turns around with it in her mouth, she can't see me. Poor thing has found her trophy, but she's a retriever, and finding the prize is only half the process. She knows I'm out there somewhere, so her nose goes up in the air like a periscope, her ears perk up like antennae, and she searches. There is a fearlessness in Bessie's spirit. She refuses to give up the games she loves, no matter how difficult or puzzling they become. A lot of instinct is at work here, but ample doses of courage, resilience, and defiance are also in play. Bessie and I are performing a delicate balancing act. At what point does this game become a mockery of a great dog's fading glory? At what point does it become more comical than productive, more cruel than pleasant? I take my cue from Bessie. Somehow, this wonderful girl can still speak with her eyes. And based on my voice, she knows where to find me. And she returns the ball at my feet and looks at me with a penetrating, haunting stare. And though I know she cannot really see me, her message is clear. Don't you dare stop throwing balls for me, ever, no matter how hopeless I may seem. Bessie reminds me that we are defined more by our spirit and effort than by our results. Again, any questions? Yeah. They really do. It's really fun to watch in action too. If you just sit back and let her figure it out, it's inspiring. So we're back on the front porch. Remember that picture we took when she was a little puppy right at the beginning? Here she is. She's back there, and she's about 6 now. And at this point, if we let her out in the backyard and shined a flashlight on her, only her right eye would glow back. You know how dogs have that iridescent look at night when you shine a flashlight and you see those 2 orbs shining back here? Only one of them was, just her right one. And so this chapter is called Right-Eyed Bessie. The quote at the beginning, there are some people who see a great deal and some who see very little in the same thing. I sometimes wish I'd filmed Bessie's transition to blindness. Her mannerisms are pretty much unchanged. Her body remembers what to do, but the graceful girl is now awkward at times. She's like a ballet dancer who never had to think about her movements in relation to space, gradually becoming clumsy. In some ways, our 6.5-year-old is in her prime. If you watch Bessie from a distance in an open field, you'll see a dog in full. And the closer you get, the clearer her handicap. And when you get close enough to touch her, Bessie will flinch at the touch, just for an instant, until she knows she's safe. And that's when you realize she can't see. And of course, those empty eyes that are turning white tell the story. I see and sense the world differently now. Moments of natural beauty are clearer, richer, more brilliant. Faces are portraits, each one a memorized masterpiece. Shadows are mysterious, fleeting, treasured images painted by the sun. I want to be sure that if the lights go out for me someday, I'll have a catalog of images in my memory bank, just as Bessie does. And in the meantime, we will continue to sit in the sun together and feel the world around us. And if Bessie senses I'm next to her, she'll nudge me to scratch her ears that are as soft as the oldest t-shirt in your dresser. And she'll sigh just like she did when she could see clearly, because with her eyes closed, she still can. Any questions? So she is almost completely blind here. Just that right eye's got a sliver of light getting through somewhere. This is Kate. Kate is 3 in this picture, and is one of Bessie's all-time best friends. If you look closely on the back of Kate's jacket, it says Animal Hospital, and there's a dog print on the top. And she's got her stethoscope out. Bessie's getting an examination from Kate here. I love this picture because if you look in the top left corner, way up here, Bessie's winking. It's like she's saying, I know Kate's not a real doctor, but wink, wink, I'm going to let her give me this examination anyway. You know, she's having fun. Bess loves her holidays, just like you kids love yours. What holiday do you think this is? Yeah, good. Halloween 2 years ago. Bessie dressed up as a stately, elderly woman. And then last year, she went with a cooler, hipper look. You know, dark hair, flashy orange scarf around her neck, and some hip glasses. Of course, right? Got that one. Bessie loves the New Year's Eve party scene. She's into that, and like a lot of people, pays the price the next morning, sleeping in on New Year's Day. What holiday do you think this is, kids? Yeah, good for you. We could put 300 of those on her face. She would let us just keep sticking them. As long as we promised her a cookie when it's over. I love the one right on the end of the nose. That must be so horribly uncomfortable. This is her May Day Easter bonnet, right? You can see those eyes are just so cloudy. So this is Bessie paddleboarding. She actually was out 2 days ago on a paddleboard. And I'm going to stop here, and we've been wondering, how will we know when she's blind? What's the line that you draw and say, okay, now this is a blind dog? And we thought she'd lost her sight, but we weren't really sure until we went to the doctor for this visit. And going to the vet now with Bessie was like going with a celebrity, because all the nurses and doctors and the clerical staff, they'd all watch this transition and process. So they'd get down on the floor and they'd call Bess over and ask her questions and look at her face. I mean, they really had taken an interest. It was like being with somebody famous when we went to the vet. And so I'm not going to read the title of this chapter, but I'm going to read the quote at the beginning, because it's beautiful and powerful. It's written by a young woman named Nicole Ray. And when Nicole Ray's an author, and when she was 27 years old, she lost her eyesight rather quickly. And this is what she had to say about it. When life's got you down, keep your head up. You can't see the ground anyway. Can you imagine having that kind of courage and resilience? We've been wondering what the final test for blindness will be, what device the doctor might roll out to make a conclusive diagnosis. Ashley and I are pretty sure Bessie's lights have gone out for good, but there's nothing scientific about our analysis. It's just a sense we have. Expecting to see Bessie fitted in some complicated high-tech device that allows us to peer into those 2 milky white holes on her sweet face, we are relieved to see the doctor walk in with a handful of cotton balls. Bessie must overhear us because her ears perk up. If there's a ball involved, she knows there's fun ahead. Not in this case, though. How ironic that the ultimate test for determining Bessie's utter blindness involves an element of her favorite activity. The vet stands about 5 feet away and one by one tosses half a dozen cotton balls at her face from different angles. She doesn't blink or flinch, not at all. She accepts each one like a tough boxer on the ropes with his hands down, taking punches in the late rounds. The little pieces of fluff bounce off her nose, eyes, and forehead silently and painlessly. But in my mind, each one lands on the floor with a loud crash. The long, slow fade is over. What originally was supposed to take just 12 months has in fact stretched over 2.5 years. The tears well up in her eyes as the finality of the journey sinks in, but there are no tears from Bessie. She's sitting on the examination table with her eyes wide open and ears at attention, sensing that someone's throwing mysterious things at her. She remembers in the past that there was a treat at the end of each doctor appointment, and her instincts tell her this visit's winding down. She's even drooling a bit in happy expectation of the cookies that are coming. And when something winds down for Bessie, that only means something else is winding up. When we get home, she jumps out of the car and begins dancing in circles when Ashley promises her a walk. And off they go, with Bessie leading the way, guided by a memory burned into the joyful place in her brain where walks are stored. Yes, off they go across the baseball field and onto a path in the woods that Bessie's been walking for 7 years. No leash, just a keen sense of where to go based on experience and instinct, wrapped up in scents and sounds that keep her on the trail. She is connected to Ashley by some invisible tether of trust. Heaven forbid Bessie stop for a minute doing the things she loves just because of a little complication. I watch her disappear on her walk, embarrassed that I ever complained about anything, and vowing never to do it again, ever. Any questions? Okay. This is the book, and as I said, it didn't start out as a book. It started out as a diary that I could use for motivation when I needed it. A former student of ours was going through a rough patch in his life, and I thought one of the chapters might really help him. So I sent it to him, I emailed it to him, and a couple of days later, excuse me, I got an email back. He said, "Where'd this come from?" I told him, and he said, "Are there any more?" And I said, "Well, you asked for it." And I sent all 176 pages to him in a succession of emails. And a few days after that, he said, we need to turn this into a book. And I said, okay, but I don't have a clue how to do that. And he said, well, you helped me all those years, so let me come around and help you. So a little sidelight on this guy. He came from a great family with little means. And he ended up earning a scholarship from our school, full scholarship to Phillips Exeter out on the seacoast. And then from there, he earned a free ride to Cal Berkeley out on the West Coast. After he graduated from Cal Berkeley, he came back and lived in Boston and volunteered for City Year, which is a great organization that goes into inner city schools. And people who've been there and understand it say to the kids, no excuses. Look, I did it, you can do it, I'm going to show you how. And they give up a year of their life to go back and mentor these kids. And that's what this person did. And then he went on to graduate school and ended up tremendously successful in the world of finance. It's a great story. So he said, you and your wife helped me when I was growing up, so let me help you. And with his help, we turned this into a book. And it was so much fun working with him in that different realm. We go to schools sometimes, and I don't know if you can see her right in the middle of that mass of kids, and they're all reaching in to try to touch her, like she's got some magical powers. And when we go to schools, and I'm going to share the messages with you because they're age appropriate no matter how old you are. First message is everybody in the room, all of us have insecurities, weaknesses, things we're embarrassed about, things that we hide that hold us back. And that's part of what makes you different. That's part of the fuel in your tank. Embrace those things. Don't try to hide them. They make you stronger. The second thing is that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. The happiest, most successful people I know are really good at saying, hey, I need a little help with this. And when someone says to them, you look like you could use some help, they say, yes, I could. And that's an important thing for kids especially to know that asking for help and accepting it is really important. I want to go back for a minute. If a person in a wheelchair or a blind person or someone with intellectual disabilities walked into that same auditorium or gymnasium, those kids would sit on their hands and they wouldn't know what to say or do. They'd be completely intimidated. And our third message is respond to people with disabilities or handicaps the same way you responded to Bessie. Ask questions, offer to help, show your affection, take a genuine interest. And if you do, you'll find a heaven on earth that you didn't know existed. And we get messages from kids after we go to schools. This was a fifth grade girl at the Violet School in Alstead, New Hampshire. And this is what she sent. It was her interpretation of the cover of the book, watching the lights go out. And then this boy at the Tenney Grammar School in Methuen, Mass, he sent this card. It says, you just got to keep your head up. It looks more like a cat to me than a dog, but at least he got the message, which is, I think, most important. Have you ever heard of needs.org? NEADS? I don't know what the acronym's for, but it's a world-class service dog training program. And they're in Princeton, Mass, which is, I think, just over the border from here, in the Boston direction. Well, anyway, we donate a portion of our proceeds to Needs. And in response to that, they named this little pup in the training program Bessie. And you can't read it on her collar, sort of. Anyway, it says Bessie. And she was doing great, but after about a year, she flunked out. They have such a high bar for these dogs that if a truck goes by, an 18-wheeler, and pulls its horn, and they turn their head, they're out. And so they called us and said, would you like Bessie? And we instantly said, yes, we'll take her. And they said, you can't change your name. So we had this image in our head of a 1-year-old rambunctious Bessie and a 11-year-old at the time, aging Bessie, trying to respond to the same bad girl, good girl, don't do that. So we said, let her go to another family. But this is Bessie too. And she is now past a year in the program, and I think, fingers crossed, that she's on the cusp of graduation And we're really proud of her, and we're really proud of our association with Needs. What do you notice about this? This is Bessie at 3, and this is Bessie at 11. What jumps out at you? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, she's small. She's gotten smaller. She's shrunk. Anything else? What hasn't shrunken? Yeah, a lot of gray hair, gray in the chest. But her eyes, what about her eyes? Kids, do you notice the difference between those eyes and these eyes? And in which one are they open wider? The blind one, yeah. To me, that is the essence of Bessie. Her eyes are open wider when she's blind. And that's a message. If you can't see something or understand something, well, open your mind and open your eyes a little wider. If you can't accept somebody or tolerate somebody, open your heart a little wider. Find a way. And I just think that that picture tells us all we need to know about old Bess. I've got 2 more chapters to read, and before we wrap this up. And this one's called A Retriever Forever. And the quote at the beginning, being fearless isn't being 100% not fearful, it's being terrified, but you jump anyway. Taylor Swift said that, which is almost impossible to believe that Taylor Swift is scared before she gets on stage, because you would never guess. But she is, apparently. If you look closely at Bessie, you'll see one of the teeth on her lower jaw, one of the canines, cracked in half. And there's little traces of nicks on her face. These are scars, her trophies. This from a dog who refused to ever stop retrieving. One time she took off full speed after a toss ball, but in the wrong direction. Before I could stop her, she ran straight into a tree. Momentarily stunned with blood dripping out of both nostrils, Bessie would not be consoled. She squirmed away from my sympathetic embrace and took off with her bleeding nose to the ground, eventually finding the ball, retrieving it, and dropping it at my feet. And as she stood there with her tail wagging and her watering blind eyes wide open, her body trembling with expectation, I had no option but to throw the ball again, which I did, and which I will continue to do every day until my arm falls off or Bessie dies. She will never forgive me otherwise. Bessie refuses to back off. I sometimes wonder if she's stubborn, courageous, or just living blissfully in denial. But after further consideration, who cares? She's full of joy, living endlessly in anticipation of the next adventure, and willing to get banged out around a bit in the process. What would the alternative be? Living her life on a leash or tied to a chain so as not to bloody her nose or chip a tooth now and then? Bessie would never forgive me for choosing the safe route, cheating her out of a full life through my own caution. No thanks. Not for Bessie and not for me. Chipped teeth, bloody noses, and a few scars are nothing compared to the unmet potential of a life spent looking out the window as a safe spectator. I'll take Bessie's example for a model of how to live. All right, I want you to do something a little bit funny. Might make you uncomfortable for a minute, but that's okay. We've been together for about 45 minutes already, or close to that. I've heard all of you, almost all of you, use your dog voice tonight. I have this theory that we keep a little part of our brain active for what we call our dog voice. It's the way we talk to dogs. And you have great ones. I've heard everybody's already. I want you to, for about a minute, 30 seconds, talk to someone in the room in your best dog voice. Go ahead. Nick, what a good boy. Good boy. You're a good boy, Nick. Yeah, good dog. Good job, Nick. Good job. You are such a good boy. Oh, you're such a good boy. Good job. Good job, by the way. We did that at the Andover School in Andover, Mass. And we had 300 kids, grades 5 through kindergarten, on the floor of the cafeteria. Tables had been pushed against the wall, and the kids were all there. And we did that. It took us at least 5 minutes to get them to stop. They were having a ball with it. It's like, let's do this. I've often thought it would be a fun idea for a dinner party when people get there to say, you can only use your dog voice tonight, right? All the way through the meal. Yeah. So this chapter is called Talking to Dogs. Another thought I had was, do you remember, it seems like a century ago, but when there were, I think, as many as 16 candidates for the Democratic nomination, remember how tiresome those debates were? I had the idea that if the moderator had said, we'd like each of you to speak to the audience for 15 seconds in your dog voice. And then we would be able to go right down the list. Nope, nope, yeah, maybe, no, yes. We could have cut the field in half just by their dog voices. So this chapter is called Talking to Dogs. And it's no coincidence that man's best friend cannot talk. Sometimes when watching particularly gruff or arrogant or aggressive people in action, I wonder to myself what their dog voices sound like. For instance, what was former President Donald Trump's dog voice? Or Joe Biden's, or Nancy Pelosi. Some of these public figures, LeBron James, Hillary Clinton, Megyn Kelly. What are their dog voices? You know they've got them, right? Maybe along with releasing tax returns, candidates for elected office should submit secretly recorded copies of their dog voices as a qualification. It might be interesting. There are a number of dog voices I use with Bessie. One of them is the be careful voice when it's necessary to alert her that the terrain is changing or that something's in her path. And then there's the end of day snuggle voice, which is most private of all. I would pay a healthy ransom to prevent a recording of me talking to Bessie in this context from ever becoming public. Sometimes when meeting new people, we withhold the fact that Bessie's blind. In each case, when her handicap's discovered, the people change their dog voices, adding a more sympathetic tone. We discourage this because we're pretty sure Bessie works the angle to get food. We all need to be more in touch with our dog voices. When interviewing teaching candidates, I used to pay particular attention if a dog wandered into the picture, listening closely to the tone and melody of a candidate's dog voice. It provided an unfiltered look into the most empathetic and nurturing aspects of a person's soul. Marriage proposals should be delayed until thoroughly vetting a future spouse's dog voice. Same goes for college admission, getting a driver's license for sure, or agreeing to sit next to someone on a long airplane flight. Just think how much less pretentious we would all be if our dog voices were part of our profiles. A final thought. What's it like when someone speaks to you in their dog voice? And now you know how good it feels. Any questions? I've got one paragraph to read. Well, you've been really attentive. Thank you. Yes? Yeah, good question. I think it's more common among labs. I think it's gotten into their genes, and it crops up more often with labs than with other breeds. That's what I'm led to believe, anyway. So I want you to think of a funnel, what a funnel looks like. And starting with that first video, and the others that followed, and the slideshow and the chapters from the books, we have put a lot of stuff into this funnel. And if I said to you walking out, so what did you get out of this? At the beginning, I said, I hope you all leave with a little more bounce in your step, a little more resilience, maybe more enthusiasm for what's coming. But it's got to be shorter than that. It's got to be that one drop that comes out of the funnel at the end. And so before I give the last slide to you, I want to read what I think is Bessie's essence. Bessie unknowingly floods me with daily reminders that each of us alone is in charge of our spirit and outlook. We can think of ourselves as poor, weak victims of unlucky turns, or the happy celebrants and survivors of life's endless challenges and tests. Our girl is my hero, plain and simple. I have been inspired by her enormous strength and embarrassed by my comparative lame weakness. So, how do we take all of this and give you one thing to remember? I'm going to give you 3 quick stories that will help you. We were at a school in New Hampshire, in Andover Elementary Middle School of Andover, and in the back row were the 7th grade boys at the end of the assembly, and I said, "Are there any questions?" And I've been in schools long enough to know that that's tiger country back there, where the 7th grade boys are asking a question to impress all their friends, right? So I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Cameron." I said, "Okay, what's your question, Cameron?" And he said, "If you could change Bessie's blindness, would you?" 12 years old. I was blown away. I said, "Cameron, no, I wouldn't for a minute, because she's given so much to us and to other people that I think this was her destiny. And I wouldn't change it." But I just loved Cameron's question for a boy that age. I'd love to know what he's doing in 15 years. The second story, among many, we were at a retirement community in New London, New Hampshire. And it was over. There were about 30 people there. And I was signing books at a table like this. And there was a guy right here in a wheelchair. And Bessie had her head on his knee. And I looked over, he had beautiful, striking blue eyes. And his name was Pete. And I said, "Pete, what's your secret? All these people in the room, and Bessie's picked you." And Pete said, "I'm blind." And then it dawned on me. I said, "Pete, you just bought a book." And he said, "Yeah." Pete was 98. He said, "My 92-year-old girlfriend's going to read it to me in bed tonight." True story. And this last picture is maybe my favorite of all. We were doing a Zoom for something called Adventures in Learning at Colby Sawyer College. And you have no idea if you're connecting with people in a Zoom, because you're just staring at your computer screen. It's so frustrating. When it was over, we got some wonderful emails. And one of them was from this woman who said, "Would you mind coming over and meeting my daughter?" And I'm involved with Special Olympics of New Hampshire. I'm on the board of directors, and I think those athletes are heroic, and they inspire me beyond words. So I said, "Sure, I'd be glad to." We went over and we met Jenny, who was 52 years old. And in 2015, in the World Games in Los Angeles, she won a gold medal in freestyle, Special Olympic gold medalist. She actually won several medals. And she took such an interest in Bessie, and they bonded and they became friends. We went for walks together. And one day we got a package in the mail, and Jenny sent us her gold medal from the Olympic Games in 2015. Bessie's wearing it in that picture. We have it at home. And she wrote on the note, "From one champion to another." So those are the kind of things that happen when we're out and about with Bessie. So you take all that in the funnel, and you get the drop that comes out at the end. And this is what I want you to remember. That's what I want you to tell yourself. What's that say? Be like Bessie. Hard to do, but it's easy to remember. Be like Bessie. You see a little cut in her eye, on her right eye? Well, that's the picture that went on the book. She had just run into a planter. And the photographer said, "I'm not comfortable," a friend of ours said, "I'm just not comfortable putting that picture on the cover." I said, "Yeah, but that's Bessie." She said, "I know, I can't do it." So she photoshopped the blood out. But that is Bessie. She had just run into a planter, and she looks as happy as ever. Come here, girl. Bessie, come here. Come here. She's all excited. She knows what she's going to do. Okay. Sit. Sit. Okay. So focus on her eyes, but don't say anything, because as soon as she hears something, she knows it's good. All right, Bess, you can do this, girl. You can do this. Ready? Stay. Stay. Okay. Okay. Hey! Good girl. Good girl. First time. Good. Well, thank you all very much for sharing the evening with us.